Hey, what's up, guys? So for tonight's video, I decided I'm going to talk about a major passion of mine. I'm probably going to make this sort of an ongoing series, sort of like a once a week kind of thing. Tonight, I want to talk about video games. I want to talk about, in particular, the Final Fantasy series. This is a series that I've had a really strange and deep connection with for as long as almost as long as I've been playing video games entirely. The first one that I ever played was actually Final Fantasy One. I played that after watching my older brother play through Final Fantasy VII and never letting me touch it. I ended up one of my best friends ever, and definitely my best friend at the time. His name is Steven. He actually happened to have two copies of it. I don't know how that happened, but he had two copies of the original NES Final Fantasy cartridge. And so we spent hours and hours and hours. We never beat it, but we played that game so fucking much. It was it's a blast. It's the way that it goes about storytelling was different than a lot different than like a simple like Zelda storyline, which I had played before. It's I think the only RPG I had actually played before it. I had played both the first Zelda and the second Zelda. The second Zelda was a little bit more story based. Or I'm sorry, I think it was a third. A Link to the Past. The original Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past I had played. Um, but yeah, so Final Fantasy had this huge adventure. Come to learn later, they actually had based that whole adventure off of Dungeons and Dragons. Like the people who made Final Fantasy were big fans of Western Dungeons and Dragons style of role playing, and that's where things like their setup of magic, of how you have several levels of magic. I think 1 through 8 in Final Fantasy One. And the first level has so many uses, and the second level has so many uses, and the third level has so many uses, so on and so forth. Very similar to how Dungeons and Dragons is set up. Obviously, I'm very into role playing games. So after that, after playing through probably a half to 2/3 of the original Final Fantasy, I finally had a chance to play Final Fantasy VII. This game blew my mind, as did most people that were into role-playing games at the time. Not only were the graphics better than almost any game out there, definitely not, especially like the character models weren't better than any game out there, but the backgrounds were just absolutely gorgeous. They really set a standard for pre-rendered backgrounds. The battle system was still very similar to old style battles, but they added a few layers to it with how you set up your magic that ended up being a huge impact on the role playing sphere as well. Uh, my story with Final Fantasy VII, like I connect with Cloud a lot. Back in the day, a long time ago, actually not that long ago, but from like 11 on, I've had a severe depression that past year and a half, maybe 2 years, I started to really step out of. But I always felt like I was an imposter. I always felt like I was a little bit crazy, kind of like Cloud. Like I thought that I was someone that I'm not, in a sense. And so yeah, I was able to really strongly connect with this character. Final Fantasy VII, I made it through most of the first disc, and then all of a sudden I lost my copy. And I, years later, bought another one, and I didn't have my save file anymore, so I had to copy a save file from a friend who was right around the same spot. So I actually played through it before. When I beat it, I never had played through it all the way through with one go through. I since then have a couple more times. But yeah, it's Cloud is right in my heart, and I love Final Fantasy VII. On goes to Final Fantasy VIII. I played that one, just didn't connect. It just never hit me. I just could never really feel it right. Like the magic, like the draw system for magic was really awkward to me. There was the characters were like Squall, the main character, was just this dark, brooding emo dude, and I'd always like, even though I was very depressed, I still always prided myself on presenting happiness, on being happy around people. And I genuinely enjoyed being around people and tried to always, express that due to that. So yeah, like none of the other characters really stood out as super awesome. I liked Irvin, the gunslinger. He seemed pretty cool, but Zell was annoying. Quistis seemed kind of like a bitch. Sophie or Selfie, one of those two. I think Sophie. She seemed pretty cool. She was lighthearted, just fun character, but it still wasn't like super engaging to me. I have a weird story with Final Fantasy VIII. I bought one copy, only one copy, but I ended up owning probably 4 or 5 different copies. Both the original, the Black Label one, and the Green Label Greatest Hits one. I have no idea where they came from. All of my friends also experienced the same thing. It was just like Final Fantasies from all over got collected into my hometown. Final Fantasy VIII's got collected into my hometown and then got distributed just willy-nilly. I remember times where I had a scratched up disc 1, and then all of a sudden, like a few months later, I decided, I'm going to try to get back into Final Fantasy VIII. Oh wait, I have a scratched disc. Well, whatever, let's see if I can get past it. And the disc isn't even scratched anymore. I put it in, I can get past that, whatever cutscene was breaking on. I just don't know where they came from. Totally weird. Still, I never really connected with it. But then Final Fantasy IX came out, and by this point, I was a huge Final Fantasy fan. 7 had made such an impact on me that I knew I was going to get Final Fantasy IX the day it came out. It actually didn't happen the day it came out. It was probably a week or so afterward, before I was finally able to acquire it. And I still have my original copy. Actually, where is it? Oh, it's in some boxes. I can't really get access to that right now. But yeah, I still have that same original copy. I also had the Final Fantasy IX strategy guide that I barely used. And that game, every character, I loved every character. I especially loved Vivi and Zidane. Dagger was also such a fucking badass. Freya was just was the epitome of cool. Steiner, he was a lovable goofball, and I'll give him that, but I still just never liked his style of fighting and never got into his character a whole lot. What were some of the other characters? Aiko. Aiko was great. I'm pretty sure that was her name. The Summoner. She was awesome. She was incredibly awesome. And Salamander. Salamander was like the Cid to me, like from Final Fantasy VII. Like he wasn't the Dragoon, which was Freya, but he was just his character seemed to be someone who's both driven, but actually no, he was more of a Vincent now that I think about it. Whatever. Salamander was one of my favorite characters as well. I've played through Final Fantasy IX 3 or 4 times by now. I plan to do it many more times in my life. Definitely my favorite Final Fantasy. The music, phenomenal. Like, Final Fantasy VII's music is also phenomenal, but 9 is where it really just got into my heart and made it grow and made it just enjoy life. And I can just, as soon as I hear the music, I'm just right there, and I just immediately want to play the game. So, after beating that one, the only problem with it is the very, very end, where a boss just comes out of nowhere. And I don't mean like gameplay-wise, I mean story-wise. Like, you just don't see, like, what's up with this boss? Where did this boss come from? Playing through it several times again, he's mentioned a couple times, but it's never built up as a boss like Sephiroth was. Or like Kefka in Final Fantasy VI, which I haven't beaten, but I know the huge legend of Kefka. Because a lot of people, like, there's a huge battle online of which one is the best Final Fantasy villain, Sephiroth or Kefka. I still have to say Sephiroth, but that's just because I haven't played Final Fantasy VI all the way through. But yeah, I then got Final Fantasy X. I got it, once again, soon after it came out. I got a a PlayStation 2 for my birthday with Final Fantasy X. And I remember just sitting down and playing that for hours upon hours upon hours. I probably put a solid 50 hours into it, and I never beat it. but after a while, I just got kind of bored of it. I thought it was slower paced, even though I now do recognize, based on what friends have told me about it, that love the game, that it actually is a lot faster, because if you know what you're going to do, you just choose it, and it just immediately happens. I was more of just a long thinker. Like I would spend too much time on each decision with when it came to the battling, and the active time battle always forced me to stay at it, so it was more consistent speed. I did like a lot of the aspects of Final Fantasy X though. The main character is a little bit weird, but there's Yuna. I know Yuna was awesome. Actually, man, I only played through that, one time, and I didn't beat it, and I barely remember much about it. I know it was very much about religion, but kind of all of them have a large like spirituality, religion kind of theme to them, and they're usually not very pro organized religion, but they are all pro like feel out your spiritual way in this world kind of religion. But yeah, then I skipped Final Fantasy XI. It was online. I didn't really play online games at all. I certainly wasn't interested in getting into an online RPG, although a lot of people say it was phenomenal. On to Final Fantasy XII. I actually never got that game until years later. And a funny story with that one, my birthday is on December 12th, so 12/12. And Final Fantasy XII, I eventually got a hold of a used PlayStation 2 and decided to buy that as my first game. I went to GameStop, and the first GameStop I went to, I saw on sale that day a used copy of the Steelbook Special Edition of Final Fantasy XII for $12, and I was like, that is mine. And I snatched it up, and I bought it, and I played it a lot. I probably only played it half of the time that I had spent on Final Fantasy X, and certainly didn't beat it. I really loved the battle system, though. I thought a lot of people didn't like the battle system. I loved it. I was when I was younger, I was into making RPGs with RPG Maker, and a lot of the way that RPG Maker works is the same way that Final Fantasy XII works with your characters. You only control the main character in Final Fantasy XII, but your other characters that are on your team are controlled with they call a gambit system, where it's essentially just a series of actions that they could take with certain priorities and certain things that have to happen for them to take place. Like, for example, you put at the very top, you're curing. If someone is under like 25% health, this character is going to cure that person. And then beneath that, you put like cure status ailments, and so if somebody has a bad status ailment, this character will cure that status ailment. And then right beneath that, you finally put attacks. But the thing is, it goes through them from top to bottom, and those first two, if everyone was healed and no one had a bad status ailment, it would just skip past them and go straight to the attacks. Then you could also lower the standard attack lower and put like some sort of magic where if an enemy is weak to a certain type of magic, and you know that, or like, I think that was an option, or like if they had if it was a boss or something, or if it was just various things where you just had priorities, and from top to bottom, and the I can't even think of the actual word, the necessary events that had to be happening for that priority to be hit. And that's the same way that you did in RPG Maker. In RPG Maker you controlled all of your own characters, but you had to then program, if you're making an RPG, you had to program all of the enemies. And so through programming the enemies, I would, do that. I would set up the priorities of the thing that they do whenever they're under 10% health, they're going to heal themselves. Or the thing that they do, if they have so much MP. And also, they had an added layer in RPG Maker where every like 3 or 4 moves you could make something happen. You could so every 4 moves they're going to do this super powerful magic attack or just physical attack, assuming that they are capable of doing it, like they have enough magic power or whatever. Yeah, like I was super into RPG Maker. That's actually a video for another day, though. I loved Final Fantasy XII's battle system because of that, because I loved the programming aspect of it. I also really liked the story from what I'd read about it and just gone through the game. It seemed like it was a lot more political intrigue and like conspiracy and like just stuff that I was into at the time. Kind of grown past that now, but I was very into it back then. Onward to Final Fantasy 13, what JonTron famously calls, or semi-famously, YouTube famously, or whatever that means, calls Final Hallway 13, which I never played it. I wanted to because the main character, Lightning, seemed like such a fucking badass, but I was really into the go wherever you want to go kind of feeling that the earlier Final Fantasy games created. Final Fantasy X kind of got rid of that. Final Fantasy 12 brought it back a bit, but then Final Fantasy 13 was once again almost nothing like that. Then I got Final Fantasy 14. Yeah, there's the whole blunder with Final Fantasy 14, with the whole it was online, but it was really bad. No one wanted to play it, so they kind of like pulled it all back and almost started with a fresh slate, if I'm remembering correctly. Once again, I didn't play this one. I don't want to get into an online RPG, like a massively multiplayer online RPG. I just think that it's going to take up too much of my time. I'd rather spend that time, playing other video games or learning how to play music better, writing music, making videos now. Other things that I can actually do to grow, to challenge myself, and not just get sucked into something. Not that getting sucked into things is bad or like something that I don't like doing sometimes. I love doing it sometimes. I can't do it. I don't want to get into a massively multiplayer online RPG. Oh, I skipped this. Final Fantasy 13-2. This was an interesting one. My middle name is Noel, and the main character's name is Noel. And that was a game also that I happened to get on my birthday, which was pretty cool. I was like, hey, this is awesome, and I played it, and I really liked it. It still seemed to be, it wasn't like, it was open, but it was open because you did like some time traveling stuff, so you could choose what era and what spot you go to, but it wasn't open like a world map kind of open, which is my preferred way of an open game. But yeah, where was I going with that? I don't know. I really liked it. I liked both the main characters. Noel, I connected with him a bit because he was a little bit stubborn, a little bit like too sure of himself, and it took really bad events for him to learn to open up, to actually be a humble and good person. And Sarah, I love, my heart goes out to female characters that are like kind of holy in a sense, like they just have like a spiritual, priestessly kind of vibe to them, and she very much so was that character. But yeah, so I talked about 13 and 14 as well. I just recently got Final Fantasy 15, and I've got to say, check plus. This may now be my favorite Final Fantasy. I'm still not sure. I'm pretty sure 9 is going to be my favorite because of the nostalgia factor, but I can see how 15 is a better game. It's solid. I'm trying to play through that right now. I'm only about halfway through, like 3/4 of the way through. And I don't want to give out any spoilers because it's too new of a game. But one of the main characters is, you control 4 guys, including Noctis, the Prince of Lucis, and his 3 bodyguards. And Noctis's bride-to-be is named Lunafreya, and she is that, super awesome, like, holy female character that I love so much. And she's called the Oracle, and I don't want to say anymore. All I'm gonna say is that I feel for her so much because she is such a fucking awesome character. Now to go back a little bit though, or maybe back because I think that this is filming backwards. Anyway, I played Final Fantasy IV. I played actually 3 and 4. I didn't beat 3. It got kind of boring after a while. And 4, it took me a while to beat it. But that is right up there. That's probably right next to 9 as my second or maybe third favorite Final Fantasy. Even though I didn't play it back when I was a kid, so I wasn't like super nostalgic about it. But every one of those characters, every single character in that game is amazing. They're so genuine, and I played it on the DS, and their performances were phenomenal. Especially the main character, the main character Cecil, and how he went from being someone who's confused, who was raised to think one thing, and he was kind of forced into this raising, not because his parents raised him like that, but because he lost his parents. And then eventually, he's raised to do something that it kind of looks like he was raised by the king of this country called Baron, Baron, and he was raised to essentially do be a strong badass that does the things that the king's own son, that the king didn't seem to want his own son to do. So the evil stuff, like the mean stuff, he was raised to do this stuff. I forgot what his class actually was called. He eventually turns around, and actually I may have that backwards. Honestly. It may have been his friend Cain that was actually raised like that. Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. But regardless, eventually it comes to, and that's actually at the beginning of the game, but eventually in Cecil's life, the king starts to send him out on missions that are just mean, just evil, just doing shitty things in order to help Baron gain more power. And eventually, Cecil kind of loses his mind a little bit. He goes through a few mental breakdowns, one in particular, and after he comes out of that, he's just kind of semi-motivated, semi-pissed off, and just like not motivated, but he just has to struggle through. He knows he has to do this. He goes through this next step, this next dungeon in the game, and he becomes a paladin. He becomes a knight, like a white knight. He becomes a knight of goodness and love and joy and holiness almost. And then he continues on being a good person for the rest of the game. By the end of that game, I literally was in tears. I don't want to say too much about that because it was such a moving experience for me. I really suggest, if you like role-playing games, like Japanese role-playing games, Final Fantasy IV on the DS. I'm pretty sure you can now get it on iOS and Android as well, so go through it. Absolutely. Final Fantasy IX as well, but Final Fantasy IX didn't hit me emotionally as much as Final Fantasy IV did. The story is just phenomenal. But yeah, that was basically my story with all the Final Fantasy games. Oh, one more thing. I have beat Final Fantasy 1. I beat it on the original PlayStation. It was after it came out on the PlayStation, I forgot what the collection was. It was Final Fantasy 1 and 2, but it was on the PlayStation. I know it was also on Game Boy Advance. I think that was called Dawn of Souls, but the PlayStation 1 was Origins, I think? Final Fantasy Origins? I don't remember though. But yeah, fantastic. Like I said, it definitely had a deeper story than any of the other RPGs that I'd played before the original Final Fantasy came out. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I have to say about it. I hope that somebody likes Final Fantasy and is as passionate about it. If you are, please comment down below. Tell me about your stories, about the first Final Fantasy game you played, the one that has influenced you the most, etc., etc. Which one you like the most. Yeah, I hope you guys have a good night. I now got to get this edited and uploaded, as soon as possible. So peace out.